Is life a set of rules? Is music governed by strict rules? Does love have rules? The Man with the Umbrella has very meticulous rules. Awake at 7:18 a.m. Inspiration from 10:23 to 11:47. Lunch from 12:11 to 12:14 p.m. Invigorating horseback ride from 1:19 to 2:53 p.m. New inspiration from 3:12 to 4:07 p.m. Varied activities: fencing, meditation, idleness, visits, contemplation, agility, swimming from 4:21 to 6:47 p.m. Dinner is served at 7:16 and ends at 7:20. Following are symphonic readings aloud from 8:09 to 9:59 p.m. Finally, at 10:37,
I retire. Once a week, abrupt awakening at 3:19 in the morning on Tuesdays.
Paris breathed an air of summer and festivity. The streets were crowded, the cafes glittered under the gaslight, the crowd swelled. There was a great throng on the sidewalks, an uninterrupted murmur of people jostling and watching each other pass by, while in the center of the street, among the rivulets of carriages, a more feverish animation stirred. It was the grand city, with its hot nights full of scents and sounds, where luxury and misery brushed against each other, where love was a commodity and vice a habit. Schedules, recommendations, notes, ideas and thoughts are fleeting. It's best to always have a notebook at hand. Even these short piano compositions are notes with pedantic but resolute premises and a touch of modernity.
I composed these brief pieces with the intent of preparing children for the sonority of a new music.
It's 1913. Erik Satie, our enigmatic man with the umbrella, is already a mature gentleman. Satie, an emblem of the Belle Époque, a Parisian soul by choice, was born on the windy shores of Normandy in Honfleur on May 17, 1866. His mother, Jane Leslie Anton, a resolute and firm Scotswoman, is described by her husband Alfred, a Norman shipping agent, as a cultured, distinguished woman, a refined musician, and a modest painter. Honfleur, with its bleak and windswept landscapes, seems like a canvas by Claude Monet. Against every rule, against every plan, against ordered not books, Satie's life was a disordered waltz, a succession of accelerandos, rubatos, and rallentandos. At just 6 years of age, the first gust of wind disrupted the harmony, the death of his mother, and the disintegration of the family. Erik and his brother remain in Honfleur with their grandparents, while their father and sister moved to Paris. That period in Honfleur becomes, for young Erik, an opportunity to savor the delights of art and music. His mentor is his uncle Adrien, an unconformist, atheist, and unbeliever, passionate about theater, music, and above all, the circus. Yet, despite his uncle's anti-clerical influence, young Satie receives a Christian education and takes music lessons from the town cathedral's organist. Then the wind blows again. The death of his grandmother, a new life in Paris with his father and his stepmother, a music teacher.
Paris, with its crowded streets and long shadows at dusk, welcomes Erik Satie. The waltz of his life continues, irregular and fascinating, just like him, just like his music. Let's take a bird's eye view. Paris, with its lively spirit, so effervescent that it recalls the ballet Excelsior, which, after its Milanese successes, arrived in Paris for the 1889 World's Fair. What stories does it tell us from the years when our men with the umbrella strolled through the boulevards and cafes? Between 1866 and 1925, Paris represents one of the most dynamic and transformative periods in its history, marked by extraordinary artistic and cultural effervescence. During these years, the city not only evolves urbanistically, but also becomes a hub of innovations that profoundly influence the global cultural landscape. In 1866, Paris is under the Second Empire of Napoleon III. This period is characterized by the grand urban transformations promoted by Baron Haussmann, who redesigns the city with wide boulevards, public parks, and new infrastructures, creating a modern and functional capital. However, the defeat in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 leads to the fall of Napoleon III and the establishment of the Third Republic, an era of political instability, but also significant economic and industrial development. The Belle Époque, from 1871 to 1914, is a period of prosperity and optimism, during which Paris becomes a center of technological and cultural innovation. The 1889 World's Fair, culminating in the construction of the Eiffel Tower, symbolizes progress and human ingenuity. The city attracts artists, writers, and intellectuals from around the world, becoming an epicenter of modernism. During this period, Paris sees the birth and flourishing of revolutionary artistic movements. Impressionism emerges in the 1860s and 1880s with artists like Claude Monet, Edgar Degas, and Pierre-Auguste Renoir, redefining painting through innovative use of light and color. Post-Impressionism follows, with Vincent van Gogh and Paul Cézanne, pushing the boundaries of art further, heralding the advent of modern art. At the beginning of the 20th century, Paris becomes the center of Cubism, with Pablo Picasso and Georges Braque deconstructing traditional forms and perspective, opening new avenues in visual art. In the 1920s, Surrealism emerges with artists like Salvador Dalí and René Magritte, exploring the unconscious and dreams. Paris also becomes a focal point for literature, hosting literary movements such as Symbolism, represented by poets like Stéphane Mallarmé and Paul Verlaine, and later Modernism, with writers like James Joyce, Ernest Hemingway, and Gertrude Stein, finding inspiration in the vibrant Parisian scene. The city is also a center of philosophical and political thought. The period sees the emergence of significant philosophers like Henri Bergson, whose works on temporal experience influenced many artists and writers. Additionally, Paris is a hotbed of political and social movements, from socialism to anarchism, profoundly influencing the cultural landscape. Music and dance experience unprecedented flourishing, with composers like Claude Debussy and Maurice Ravel introducing new sounds and musical structures, while Erik Satie, with his minimalist and unconventional style, anticipates movements like minimalism and ambient music. The city also witnesses the birth of modern ballet, with collaborations between choreographers like Sergei Diaghilev and visual artists like Picasso. World War I abruptly interrupts the Belle Époque, bringing devastation and profound social changes. However, in the post-war period, Paris is reborn during the so-called Roaring Twenties, becoming a vibrant cultural center. The city hosts an explosion of artistic and literary creativity, with a mix of styles and influences that make it a place of extraordinary innovation. Cinema emerges as a new art form in Paris, with the Lumiere brothers inventing the cinematograph in 1895. Photography develops in parallel, with pioneers like Eugène Paché documenting the city's daily life. Modernist architecture makes its entrance with figures like Le Corbusier, who promote functional and innovative design. The city also sees the development of Art Nouveau, with iconic buildings designed by architects like Hector Guimard. Between 1866 and 1925, Paris transforms radically, becoming a crucible of innovation and creativity. The city not only reflects the tensions and transformations of its time, but also anticipates and guides them, solidifying its role as the world capital of art and culture. From Haussmann to Picasso, from Satie to Joyce, Paris embodies the spirit of change and modernity, leaving a lasting legacy that continues to influence the contemporary world.
You really want to know what Paris was like in my time? But what can I possibly tell you? I know nothing. I can only say that my name is Erik Satie, just like anyone else.
The girls whose cheeks had been bronzed by the sea, with a hue that made their skin infinitely paler under the glow of the chandeliers, their white complexion, an indelible reflection of daylight, a sweet reassurance, seemed to float with their light laughter, like swallows darting through the blue above the seas of warm countries. Like seagulls, they loved to skim the crests of the waves and rest, if only for a moment, on the beaches before setting off again for distant lands.
You know, being dad has its great advantages. No rent to pay, no taxes, no need to shelter from the rain, though I always carry an umbrella. And above all, no need to tell others about yourself. If you've achieved some deserved or undeserved notoriety, there might be someone who's wasted time writing something about your life. That happened to me too. I have to thank my friend Jose. Jose to friends, of course. To the public, he was J.P. Contamant de la Tour, who in August 1925 commemorated me by spilling some stories. What a gossip.
When Erik Satie jokingly said, "When I'm dead, you write, Erik Satie, life and works," he would burst into a loud and hearty laugh. He also talked about dying young at 25 of tuberculosis like a sickly romantic poet. "They'll put me in a wheelchair, taking me out for walks in the sun," he would say, enjoying my protests, "imagine me as a nurse." Fortunately, he did not die so young, and we can still enjoy his music, served with courageous loyalty. Alas, I never really thought that one day I would fulfill his mocking wish. Our friendship was fraternal, born who knows how, perhaps through those vague entities that chance used to bind two kindred spirits. We were inseparable, spending days and nights together, exchanging ideas, dreaming of sensational successes, getting drunk on wild hopes, and laughing at our misery. We lived the last episodes of Murger's bohemian life, transplanted from the Latin Quarter to Montmartre. We didn't eat every day, but we never missed an apéritif. I remember a pair of trousers and shoes we shared, patching them up every morning before heading out to find a publisher who would recognize our genius and open the doors to glory. Yet, Satie could have avoided these deprivations. He came from an excellent family that denied him nothing. In the early years of our friendship, he was wise, elegant, and attentive to good manners. But his instinct called him elsewhere. Had he stayed in that environment, his personality would have not developed. It was the chat noir of Agothe that revealed his vocation and transformed him completely. Entering the conservatory at 12 in Georges Maquia's piano class, he dreamed of becoming a pianist, giving lessons and concerts. He studied Beethoven, Bach, Schumann, Chopin, Liszt, and Franck, but he processed them with an essentially fantastic touch. He was a mediocre student, his teacher deploring his lack of application. "You are a cunning one," he repeated. Satie didn't care, seeing studies only as a way to reduce military service. Influenced by Massenet, then the conservatory's idol, Satie composed melody in the master's style. They were the stammering of a talent that would evolve singularly, like those youthful words that won the zones in maturity. We were introduced to the chat noir circle by Vital Hoquet, a charming humorist known as Narcisse Lebeau. When we entered a cabaret, Vital Hoquet would solemnly announce, "Erik Satie est gymnopédiste," and Rodolphe Sailly would respond, bowing, "Indeed, a splendid profession." Satie found his environment immediately, thanks also to Alphonse Allais, a fellow Honfleur native. Their shared hometown and love for it made them inseparable friends. Those who didn't know the chat noir of that era can hardly imagine what that celebrated meeting place was like.
The chat noir, a place of shadows and light, was far more than a casual haunt for Erik Satie. As the accompanying pianist for the flamboyant Vincent Ipsia, he performed the job he himself described with a hint of disdain as a silly and dirty profession. Yet, beneath the veneer of disillusionment, the chat noir was also the secret workshop where Satie honed his style, seeking his distinctive mark. The prestigious Café Concert was a crossroad for artists and dreamers of all kinds. Among them, the enchanting voice of Paulette Dafty emerged like a melody in a stormy night. For her, Satie would compose the timeless notes of Je te veux, an anthem to love that would transcend the ages. In the small and austere house in Arquerie, far from the allure and bohemians of Montmartre, gloom and melancholy reigned. A sharp-edged, almost absurd building housed the artist's refuge, surrounded by an industrial landscape ill-suited to his sensitive soul. Satie found in this place the inspiration for his most famous compositions. Imagine the artist, solitary and absorbed, at the piano in that modest apartment. Among scattered sheets and a weary piano, Satie's fingers danced across the keys, weaving the magic of a melody destined to speak of eternal love. Thus, amidst the dust of his scores and the shadows of a forgotten piano, Erik Satie created, and his music, born in a humble refuge, would continue to resonate, carrying with it the eternal breath of love and beauty.
Observing it was unavoidable. The studio, a structure of 3 meters high, 2 meters long, and 1.5 meters wide, devoid of windows except for a small triangular opening near the ceiling, through which a sprinkle of sky peered in. The space barely accommodated the bed, squeezed against the piano, venerated by Satie through all his struggles. Though he never used it, everything tightly packed, preventing the door from moving. To enter, one had to squeeze through a gap and climb over the bed. There, so positioned, Satie spent his time lying down. In summer, he roasted. In winter, he froze, so he would lay clothes over the blanket, even shoes, piling them up for warmth, covering himself with a dozen shirts. Lacking buttons, he fastened them with a hat pin, with a cork at the tip to avoid pricking himself. He christened his new abode the placard. The walls were covered with medieval images, sketches, and paintings. He found it marvelous. Here, Satie wrote the first works that launched his reputation: the Sarabande, the Gymnopédie, the Ogive, the Nocienne. Here, he began composing the Sonnerie de la Rose-Croix and the Prélude de la Porte héroïque du ciel. We had nearly abandoned Le Chat Noir for the Auberge du Clou on Avenue Trudun. Even there, in the underground, the intellectual life of Montmartre pulsed, but the clientele was more diverse. There were well-heeled scions, financiers, merchants, and industrialists with artistic pretensions, towards whom we felt limited sympathy. These people regarded Erik Satie as a curiosity, retaliated by intervening in their discussions, confusing them to the point of bewilderment. One evening, the topic was La Fontaine. Someone mentioned the fable, The Blind Man and the Lame Man. Satie exclaimed, "It wasn't the blind man and the lame man, but the blind man and the consumptive." General protests ensued. "What? You don't know the story of the blind man carrying the lame man on his back while the latter guides him? What you're saying is stupid." Satie protested vehemently. "A lame man guiding the steps of a blind man is nothing extraordinary. You see it every day. But the combination of a blind man and a consumptive is more poetic, fitting the style of La Fontaine." Everyone was strong, for the fable in question was not by La Fontaine, but by Florian. It didn't matter. In that environment, it took little to ignite a debate on any topic. Satie defended his point of view firmly. The dispute flared up. Harsh words were exchanged. The more moderate ones tried to calm the situation. "Look how he's enjoying himself," they exclaimed. "Say he might as well send us to hell." In short, the argument escalated into a brawl that took place on the embankment of Rue de Mafquilla under the light of a gas lamp. Such scenes happened often, much to Satie's great delight. Fortunately, they left no lasting consequences, and the next day everyone was friends again. However, that kind of jest eventually wore thin, and something new had to be invented. Together, we created Ushputa, a ballet in 3 acts, where the pleasure of extravagance reigned supreme. Dare I say the word now accepted in the dictionary of the Academy, épaté, le bourgeois. Starting from the libretto, Satie composed 6 musical pieces, grandiosely called his score. He had it printed, and Suzanne Baladon designed a medallion for the cover with our overlapping profiles. The booklet had just been released, and already all of Montmartre was talking about it. I dare say it had the intended effect. Heated debates soon erupted. Some cried masterpiece, while others mocked it as a horrible farce. One evening, at the Clou, Satie played his score on the piano. The opinions were decidedly mixed. He garnered enthusiastic applause and fierce criticism. To those who did not understand him, he declared flatly that they were merely ignorant bourgeois and that he would force the opera to stage the ballet, proving every naysayer wrong. Besides, he added with the utmost seriousness, there are far superior pieces, but my well-known modesty forbids me from saying so. Amidst the uproar caused by his performance, one man remained impassive. Under a stubborn, domed forehead, smoke-dark eyes glowed like burning coals. With arms crossed over his chest, he silently smiled into his phone-like beard. That man was Claude Debussy.
Jose, let's have a little bit of silence now. It would be nice if we all embraced a little silence. Screenwriters, take note of this phrase. It might come in handy. So let's not say another word about Suzanne. Let's avoid scandal. After all, I've been nearsighted since birth and emotionally farsighted. And after the ardor of a love now flooded, nothing remained but a cold solitude, filling my head with emptiness. But then the music floats in the air, and so let's launch into a wild gallop.
Genius or buffoon? The dichotomy is as fascinating as it is irrelevant when it comes to Erik Satie. Certainly, a figure far from anonymous, his contemporaries were divided. There were those who hailed him as a revolutionary genius, and those who, with thinly veiled disdain, considered him a buffoon. Satie, with his unmistakable aplomb, managed to mock intellectuals and defend his eccentric positions with a seriousness that disarmed even the most stubborn critics. Among the most significant moments of his life was his friendship with Claude Debussy, an admirer of his audacity and free spirit. This bond represented one of the many luminous facets of a career otherwise characterized by episodes as bizarre as they were brilliant. Erik Satie departed this world on July 1st, 1925, but his musical legacy took decades to be fully appreciated. His life unfolds like a series of snapshots, composing theatrical scenes, teetering between the ridiculous and the sublime, consecrating him as a macon in the history of 20th century culture and music. Satie was a rebel who danced on the edge of the absurd, creating eternal beauty from a blend of irony and talent. Look up, you might catch a glimpse of his silhouette suspended above your heads, next to that canon to the notes of intellect. Pay no mind to criticism, sweep away the cliché. As his friend Jean Cocteau said, what the public criticizes in you, cultivated, that is you. And so, in a perpetual waltz of contradictions, Erik Satie bids us farewell, waving his inseparable umbrella with an enigmatic smile and a melody resonating into eternity.